Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to this recording of the final session of our series of 3 webinars. Today we take a bit of a shift in direction, and it's my privilege to welcome Prof. Pablo Gregorini to come and talk to us about some of the work that he's doing.
But first of all, thank you for the invite, my dear friend. I just want to, I see Mark there, and his Argentinian wife, and so I see Sue there. Like without Sue's daughter, a lot of the things that I'm doing here in New Zealand would have been impossible. So thank you, Sue, for being the mom of Anita. And Emily, it's really good to see you again. So some of you, before I want to say something, as some of you know, I've been just going through a really rough patch with one of my daughters. So without getting emotional, I know some of you have called me and texted me. So thank you very much. I'm just catching up with a lot of things. So Mark, it's in my agenda. I was supposed to call on you this week. So I will do. So just thank you very much for all your patience. And I can say that I just got back to life. So I'm very happy now. My daughter is safe and just all good. So things have drastically changed. And I'm getting emotional when I say that. So I just better stop, because if not, I'm going to be crying like a little baby the rest of the hour. But thank you, Hugh, and yeah, I'm all ears. Just shoot with questions, and we go from there.
Yeah, so I was going to bring that up, but thank you for bringing that up, Pablo, because I think a really good starting point is let's just know a little bit more about Pablo Gregorini. I mean, we all know the great stuff that you're doing within the university, but let's back up the bus a little bit and how did you start? Why did you get into academia? I mean, what sort of got your interest going in agriculture, and then ultimately become a global leader in this whole area of regenerative grazing and land management.
Well,
and we know you've got your own big ranch. You're breeding some low lines, and obviously, as in Argentina, you've got a really good love for meat. So how does that all kind of work together?
Oh, thank you. Well, from the academic side of the story, it runs in my family. My 2 parents were academic in the University of La Plata. Being my dad a physician, my mom a theologian. But I didn't take that avenue, and I was interested in the natural world, and I always wanted to be an ecologist and a zoologist. And I even used to burn football fields because they were having the grass too tall, and I wanted the pasture to be renewed there, or the football field, when I was a little kid, following some burning strategies. But all of that, the academic and the research bag that I got, started with my grandfather. When he saw I was interested in those sort of things, he started buying some magazines for me when I was a kid. There was, for example, Jacques Cousteau magazine, or getting. There used to be a magazine in Argentina that was called Muy Interesante, just very, very interesting, or something like that. So I was a kid and reading science in popular media. So all of that kept going, and my dad and my mom just encouraged me to follow that path. I was a rebel for a while. Instead of going to zoology, which is what I really wanted to do, work with wild ruminants and follow the migration of the caribou and the wildebeest. That was my original interest. And I said, well, I just want to be a farmer as well, because I used to spend summers in a dairy farm of a friend. I said, well, probably in Argentina there is no caribous, there is no wildebeest or bison. A dairy cow is the closest I can get. So I decided to get into the agronomy. So did my undergrad, finished that, and went to do kind of sort of consultancy in cow-calf operations in the flooding Pampa, nearby my city. till, the research bug got me again. And then, from then on, I went back to uni, a different university, did the master's 1, 2, then moved to the Wageningen University, worked 3 years there, then in England, and then, and here I am. So that's one of the things that attract me the most is curiosity. And I always was curious about the behavior of the animals. And then because of that behavior of the animals, I had the honor to work with people that I really admire and became friends, like of Fred Provenza and Ian Gordon. But there was some of the things that that got me the most. I remember I finished my PhD when I was working in the connection between ingestive and digestive behavior of grazing ruminants. I finished all excited about that. And my dad came and asked me and said, well, how would that help people? And well, I don't know. And that's when by then I was working with Fred Provenza already. And we started to get it, how we can transcend from grazing management to those sort of things that through grazing management not only enhance the well-being and health of the land, but the people and the beings that inhabit that landscape. And that's why I'm more and more focused now and think that has an impact there rather than science for the sake of it. Is that fair enough, Hugh? I can't keep talking about it, but
Yeah, no, that's a great start. It's good to know a little bit what sits in behind that great mind, and I think that whole concept of making it work for health of the system, I think, always shows through in what you do and how you approach things. So it's handy to know, why that's an important part of what you do.
yeah, and what I mean, health. A lot of people, it's not only. I keep saying that we keep quoting the definition of the health by the WHO, right? Which is not only the absence of, by the presence of that integral mental and physical well-being of people. So that's what we mean by health as well. Literally to have the pleasure, in addition to that, to be in a particular place and have the sense of belonging with that place because we are part of it. Yeah, we are just, it's, as you know, instead of egocentric, acknowledging that we are part of it. And we feed off them now and the ones feed off us, and we are just at endless change, as Fred said, that we are part of it and enjoy the journey what we are.
Let's move a little bit in that direction, and I think, for me, that book that Fred's done called Nourishment, it should be a compulsory read for everyone, because it basically calls out the myth that we're all pretty much the same and we need the same diets and all of these other things. But again, if we think about that, and this is around farmers, and so when we think about that through a farming lens and the management of animals, we kind of spend a lot of time focusing on the use of monocultures, inputs that actually try and control what it is that we're feeding those animals within a relatively narrow spectrum. And yet, we know that the rumen in that animal is a pretty diverse and interesting organ, and it's the rumen that feeds the animals and the ruminants that we work with.
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking about some of the work that you and Fred have done and some of the understandings around that, you want to kind of talk a little bit about how we need to be thinking in that space, and how we need to be thinking more around how we manage our diets and the costs of not actually recognizing the importance of diversity.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. Those are the questions that we've been exploring for a while, and thank you to that new technology we can explore them further. And concept that, without getting too technical with the hedonics of just simply letting the animal having pleasure of enjoying their own individuality, and just biodiversity, but a biodiversity that is functional, not only in one dimension, but the multiple dimensions. From that point of view, we start thinking. And I remember what I was working at dairy and said, yes, I did have, I spent some time at dairy and said, and it's not my fault though. But we started to talk about, why those things happen, why those animals that were supposed to be eating rocket fuel, to quote what is referred to, the best ryegrass white clover ever, why those animals were having what's technically called incidental augmentation, right? So animals kept eating because they were lacking of a particular nutrient, or simply because they didn't get satiated, right? And you were offered as much as you like, and they kept eating. But in nature, well, it get to a point that you stop eating. And the paradox that to be a good nutritionist, you need to increase the intake. And those sort of things didn't attract me. And said, well, a good nutritionist would be, well, you need to get the animals well, you need to get the animals satiated, and you need to make the animals eat the same or less and produce the same or more. So we start exploring those concepts, incidental restriction to be technical, and how to cope with that dietary monotony. Like I keep asking the question, and some of you have heard me before, and so I do apologize if I use the same example. But for example, if I just point one particular, Mark, what is the food that you like to eat the most?
Roast lamb or roast beef.
Pretty much, we share that palate, right? But if I say, well, look, today for lunch, roast beef, cool, all happy. For dinner, by the way, we got roast beef. Okay. Tomorrow breakfast, Mark, what we got? Roast beef, and so on. You get the point there, right? So you literally get tired of it, tired of me, and sick of it, and sick of me. But the animals happen the same thing. Right? It's that the constant monotony, offered to the animals, get the animal tired and sick of it. And when the animal gets tired of it, there are some inefficiencies of energy utilization. There are literally psychological problems with the animals, if you like, that we have detected already, and we have data supporting that, and sick of it. Getting into the point of oxidative stress and physiological stress that lead into morbidity of animals. So the alternative to a dietary monotony would have been, okay, a biodiverse environment, which is not only taxonomically different, multiple species, and then implicitly of that came a massive biochemical richness. And that's what Fred and I were exploring, and then with Ian Gordon and Juan Villalba as well, another Archie, but in the states say, well, the richer the biochemistry is in the pasture, the better it's going to be for the animal. And we start exploring that, and we've seen, we run already 26 experiments, and we haven't seen much of a difference in the performance of the animal. And a lot of that thanks to Sue's daughter, Dr. Anita Fleming, right? We haven't seen, the effect of offering the animals a super rich 20-something species, and on the animal, any improvement in well-being, any improvement in performance, or a little bit of improvement in environmental impact as compared to ryegrass. So, and then Fred and I were talking a while ago and said, well, remember that good old work that we did with bisons, and we did with bison in the Ted Turner farms of feedlot, if you like. We were talking about feedlot and cows in feedlot, where we just split the TMR in the components. You know, same amount of feed, but the components, instead of being completely mixed, perfect diet. Like a nutritionist would say, the perfect bite, and say, no difference in the TMR, but there was an increase in feed conversion efficiency when we split the diet, and the animals literally express their own nutritional wisdom, to be in their own individualities. So we thought, okay, ain't that similar to a multi-species pasture? What about if we just split that up? That was curiosity. Would that happen in a grazing situation, right? So we ran 4 PhD studies there with a bunch of experiments where we measure, you name it, we measure everything. And definitely we found that, you know, when we were splitting that and making that diversity more accessible, if you like, for the animal to express their own individualities, we have fantastic results that some of you already know, that I presented in several places, but we average amongst all the animals, we increase 30% the performance, we enhance animal well-being, and you know, lately we went through even human trials. So those
we might come back into more detail on that, Pablo,
yeah,
a little bit later. But one of the things that, and it's interesting because, you know, in my own experience, when we were using a bit, starting to put cows on feedlots, you know, and we were mixing rations. When we first did that, I observed, you know, the cows that often go and pick parts out of that, even though you're giving them a mixed ration, they were actually going in there and trying to find stuff preferentially. But from a practical point of view, from a farming point of view, you know, you've identified. Well, I guess where I'm going with this is that is this a continuum as we move, if you like, from a monoculture of a ryegrass or a biculture of a ryegrass and a clover into bringing more diversity into that system and grazing those animals in a way that gives them more opportunity to graze parts of it. Are we going to see gradual increases, or do we need to be thinking about going right to the extreme?
I would hope to. I would hope to move, you know, in a continuum, but I would hope that the pendulum goes right to the extreme. With a landscape farm is completely, it's diverse. It's like we were talking, you know, just create multiple dishes around the farm that the animal can navigate around the farm, and that's when we start mixing with design that we've been talking about it, and provide an animal with that constant opportunity to choose and conform their own diet. So that's one thing. The other thing is like just offering the animal something that stimulate the motivation to eat, or control sometime. Okay, well, now you have to eat that because it could be well for you later on. So manipulating that arrangement in time and space of a particular components of the diet will have a massive effect there, not only in performance and health, but the whole health of the system. So I really hope that we're moving from monotonous environments. Like I keep saying, if a student come to me, and I don't know if there is any Lincoln boy around, but if they come to me and tell me that the system one of dairy farming is a resilient system, I would fail them. Because
so if we start to think through that a really big part of trying to create this change really is going to come down to some massive farm design or land design around how we manage animals, how we graze those animals, which is a really, really big step for a lot of these farmers. I mean, firstly, the understanding that the rumen's a much more complex organ than we kind of realize, and some of the earlier points you made around the cost of monotonous feeding, if you like. But then how do we then create a system that supports us bringing that diversity and freedom, if you like, into the way we manage those animals?
Yeah, and the creation of those systems are by design, right? And so there is nothing by default. And mostly, some of the chairs that you are sitting on, they were designed by the designers based on your ergonomics, or ergonomics for you to be comfortable, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. After those, you start moving around and you say, well, I need to step. So what if we apply that concept of design for a farm with a particular purposes, and the purpose would be the whole health of the farm, or any particular goal-oriented commercialization of any of those sort of things, right? So that's what we are exercising now, playing with the nutritional ecology, applied nutritional ecology at the system level. But we are, when I use the term nutritional, I would even say, nourishment ecology, that you nourish the land, the animal, and the people by itself. And we prove that you can do all those three things at the same time. Yes, it takes a mindset change. Yes, it takes some patience, but it can be done, and not as hard as people think. It's just one step at a time. And we are exercising those sort of things in our farms, or our dairy farm at Lincoln, and hopefully we can start exercising similar approaches in different farms around New Zealand. Because we are doing some things similar in China, in the States, and in Brazil as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks for those comments, Pablo. And so maybe just shifting a little bit is that one of the things that you talk about a lot is we are what we eats, and you have a number of sort of go-to comments, if you like, around that, and that link between our food and health. Do you want to just talk a little bit about that? What does that mean, and where do we go with that? How does it work?
We've got a lot of those sort of things that we like to repeat. We all know the phrase "we are what we eat." Right? Yeah, that's with all. And I recall a Netflix documentary, designed by vegans, and I got really mad at that. I said, well, they're forgetting someone. They're forgetting someone in the picture, right? And which is the role of the herbivores and how we eat the herbivores. It is, and then we are what we eat eats. It's like we are eating them, right? So by default, we are what they eat. If they eat something that is more nourishing, we nourish ourselves, right? And that's here comes the other thing, like accepting that we are members of the community. What we do, nature's community. We have the other saying, what we do to them, we do to ourselves. And only by nurturing them can we nurture ourselves, and by healing them can we heal ourselves. Right? So it is accepting that we are part of the whole thing. We are not that special. We are a part. We are in that continuum. We are in that continuum of life. But if we get into from a tangible thing, accepting all of that, accepting that we are what we eat, accepting that I am the land is me, ko te whenua, ko o. The way we graze our animals have a massive impact on the land, and based on our experiments, based on our research, indicate that will have an impact on us in multiple terms. So we are a simple reflection of the way we graze our animals, if you like. If your diet contains animal products.
Yeah, that's great. It really brings a lot back into perspective, doesn't it? And when you start to think about what we've taken away from the way we manage our animals, it's not surprising we're so vulnerable to or dependency around antibiotics, to dependency around antiparasiticides, and crashing immune systems in these animals. And so the opportunity that comes out of that shift and that change around health and welfare of our animals, and ultimately, where we can go with that in terms of human health, is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and that's one, that's one of the things that we need to keep pursuing. I really think we are only scratching the surface, and it's a massive opportunity there. It's a massive opportunity for New Zealand farming. It's a massive opportunity to differentiate our products from more industrial production of animal products, you know. And by I mean industrial production, I don't mean feedlot or all of that, you know. It's just, you know, we will never be competing with Brazil. We will never be competing with other high meat producers or animal product producers. But focusing and taking the next step of not only dealing with environmental issues, but getting into a real matter of health, that will present us with solutions and opportunities. I really feel that we have spent too much time and politically influenced by, okay, the damage that livestock production farmers do to environment. I really believe that the farmers are scapegoats, and they shouldn't be like that. The data shows that they shouldn't, but it gets political, and I'm not a political person. Yeah. I got in my own country, I got a lot of politics already that I don't want to deal with. But I think we have the opportunity to move on. Yeah, of course, taking care of the environment, there is no doubt about it. But the question is, how? Do we want to fall into the trap of the carbon tubular view? Like, oh, just as long as we fix carbon, it's all good. Well, yeah, that's fine, but we need to get in and move from that as well, and just get into more biodiversified and redundant environments that help the whole resilience of the system, which will translate into health. And if we translate into health, there are several things that can be solved. You know, we can start alleviating, in my opinion, as long as the data that hopefully we continue gathering support that, we can help alleviate the epidemic of obesity that we are getting here in New Zealand. It's unbelievable how fast we are getting fat. The epidemic of cancer that nobody wants to talk about, you know, the blue babies that nobody wants to talk about. So I think we have been distracted by other important things. There is no doubt that, you know, the climate is changing. There is no doubt that we need to deal with those sort of things. But let's not forget about us, about the farmers, you know. Yep.
Yeah, I guess there's a number of things in there, and one of the things we talk about is that, you know, our role really is in the mindset shifting game. I mean, if we're going to try and change some of these outcomes in areas that you spend a lot of time working in, there's some barriers that we need to address, if you like. I mean, this is one of the reasons we started Farmers Footprint in New Zealand, is to throw the light on some of the outcomes that you talk about. And the other thing that concerns me is, you know, like obesity, it's the cancers that we're seeing in young children now that we never used to see, and some of these things that are now starting to show up and becoming obvious. So if we're going to make change, and this is, and I know you don't like getting into politics, but it's an unfortunate reality. How do we make some impact in a way that's going to show up differently? Because if we're going to change and adopt some of the things that this groundbreaking work that you're getting involved in and start to normalize that, we've got to find a way to support farmers to take those on board.
Well, first of all, be more vocal. Be not afraid. As long as you phrase it correctly, it's good. No, just being in a good way provocative. Right? You need to provoke a reaction to make the people think. Right? Without aggression, without being aggressive, or without falling to the trap of the unnecessary dichotomy that some scientists put. Oh, I'm a conventional farmer and you are regen. I'm a regen and you're a conventional. There is no need of that. I don't see any farmer. I can't believe any farmer is thinking, well, let me ruin the environment. Let me get unhealthy. Let me spend more money in fertilizers. Just mention one. If you mention one, I retire. Right? So just not falling into that trap of pointing fingers and saying, look, we want to advance in there. You know, we gather that for industry's interest or political interest, we are moving slower. But why don't we start supporting this? Why don't we start putting those practices? Even if governments or whoever, today is one government, tomorrow will be another one. And as you can tell, I'm trying to be politically correct there.
But I wonder what was going wrong.
At the end of the day, and it's all I would say 90% of the science my two teams, that is industry and farmers, supported. Yes, of course, if the government want to give us money, and now they want to give us money, which is too late. We run those sort of things with the support of farmers and industry now, right? So being more supportive, being patient, try risk things, within your context. I think that would create a statement, will make a statement that there is a need to change. Of course, this need to be accompanied by the markets, people that want to buy those things, or increasing the values of those, the extra value that the farmer gets there. Just falling. I imagine that none of us would like to keep thinking we are going to be commodity producers for the rest of our farming. Wouldn't be nice to say, well, we are more specialty, without getting into the niche discussion, but we are producing something that special that shouldn't be only an ingredient of other foods, losing the...
Let's go down that path a little bit and come back to this concept around functional diversity of feeding. Not so much about that, but where you've gone with that, some of the things that you're finding as a consequence of getting greater diversity of intake into animals, how that's affecting their health, ultimately farm health, but also what you've found in the human health space. I mean, the supplements and health supplements and pills have become one of the biggest growth industries globally, and yet, my understanding of where you've got to is we actually can do that on farm. We don't need those.
Exactly. Well, what we found is like you may not need fish oil. You need to eat the fish, the whole fish, right? And you don't need to eat a particular vitamin E supplement. You need to eat foods that you recognize that have a myriad of nutrients and chemicals that enable you to absorb and metabolize vitamin E, right? So, and that's why a lot of these magic supplements at the end of the day do not work, because we are forgetting of the companions that come from those nutrients. We and this is, to be honest with you, these are things that we don't have the full answer yet in some of the things that we find, because you say, well, even with Anita, I have found, and Sagaraf, I have found, animals in multi-species pasture, they have a greater diversity in their diet, right? But it's that that couldn't have been controlled by them, by those animals. And again, when we give them the chance, they seem to exercise their nutritional wisdom. Why we should know more than them of what they require? Why? Just simply because we read it in a book, or because a professor that is supposed to know everything tells you to do that, or they magically know what they require. I imagine that if I let you pick on a table from a lot of feeds, all of you will have a completely different diet. We may end up eating the same amount and gain the same amount of weight, but we will be picking different diet. So we found, for example, when we look at the milk composition, right, to give you an idea, as opposed to monotony and as opposed to diversity that is not functional, functional diversity, right, and or the data that Anita found was for milk we increased by 1.4 fold increase in deoxycarnitine. And I'm reading because those those chemical entities are hard to pronounce, not only to read, right? But for example, deficiencies in dioxycarnitine reduce intake of infants, reduce the so induce to renal failure, induce weakness and fatigue, make you prone to diabetes, and increase your risk of heart attack. So as compared to the other two, providing the animal the options to pick their own diet, right? Because all those species were in that diverse, fully diverse pasture, if you like, as well, got 1.4 increase, for 1.4 fold increase. You also find that in that milk with 1.2 fold increase in pantothenate, which is the vitamin B, which help us use fat and protein. Right? So if it help you use fat, you can see in some of those supplements, use vitamin B because it will make you thin. Okay, well, there you go. But also vitamin B is used to treat depression, right? I should take it. But we reduced by 50% 3-ethylamine nitrous oxide, whatever you pronounce that. I can just write it down for you, right? It's TMO, which is induced cardiovascular disease, inflammation, fatty liver, and increased risk of type 2 diabetes. So this milk has 50% of that, 50% less of that. 2.1-fold increase in tyrosine. The tyrosine is an amino acid, right? That is, it's related to the enhancement of cognitive function. Used to ameliorate depression, anxiety, and enhance cognitive performance in kids. So that's with milk, right? Which is quite significant, if you like. But then when we went to the venison metabolomics, and we found that in venison there was an increase of 27-fold of proline betaine, right? Which is related to fetal brain development and cognitive function. Again, in the way our psyche works, anti-inflammatory and antioxidant, anti-carcinogenic, anti-diabetic, and protect our cardiac, renal, and neural functions. We find in there a 59-fold increase in pipecolic acid. This is what the pipecolic acid is associated with, pretty much to stress. The greater pipecolic acid you will have less free radicals and less stress, right? And the pipecolic acid is related to the secretion of GABA aminobutyric acid, right? You name it. Which is, the more GABA you have got, indicate that the more relaxed you are, right? So we find that in there. And we find, better eating qualities with less putrescine, which is a biomarker of freshness. And that's what we joke around. Okay, how are you gonna graze Bambi? How are you gonna eat? If you treat Bambi well, Bambi will treat you well as well. But that in the tissue, but then we went further and said, well, what would happen when people eat those sort of things? So we got similar results with beef, right? And we fed beef to people now. So this is real human data, and it's the first experiment which is cause and effect, right? So it's not an association. It's like, if you eat this, most likely you will have that in your blood. And all the people that were in that experiment went through all these 3 treatments: dietary monotony, diversity, and functional diversity. So what Anita found in this experiment is that it was a quite significant increase in vitamin E in people, which is gamma tocopherol, which is the most potent antioxidant you could ever imagine, right? And anti-inflammatory, and it's inversely related to colon cancer. Also, 1-fold increase in glycogenol dioxylate, which pretty much inhibit cholesterol production and absorption, decrease gallstone formation. Got another, 1.4 increase in the blood of people, right? Of hydroxymethylglutarate, which is pretty much statins, the natural statins. And I need to be very careful in how I phrase this because, when you get to the human health, it's just quite, we need to be careful. I don't know how to say it, but he said, well, if you got heart problems and you go to a doctor, one of the first things the doctor will tell you, stop eating red meat. Yeah, good luck with me, right? I'd rather die of a heart attack. But yes, but they say, well, what if that red meat has a composition that not only help me with a bunch of things, as I mentioned before, but has the statins, natural statins, right? Which we found there, the natural statins in that meat, and several other things that, so that we found. So we run a lamb trial as well. So we are just waiting for the analysis of the data, but I imagine we'll get the same thing. And we are experiments with rats now.
Would it be fair to say that the way we've managed our animals over the years has actually taken away that ability, and what you're actually finding now is the normal inherent capacity of those animals when we create the conditions for those to show up?
Definitely, no doubts. We just when you when you go through rangelands situations, when you see different patches of this plant, of that plant, and the animals moving around, right? Oh, well, I eat this now, and then I move to the other one. That's they make that diversity functional for them. Now, in a farming environment, we have the chance to enhance that quite a lot and get even more benefits. It's not like, we sort of control the animal. We modulate the behavior of the animals to enhance those things that happen in nature. It's pretty much, by definition, is agroecology. Yeah.
So if we're seeing those responses in humans, we should be seeing the same responses in those animals that will be, because they'll be benefiting also from that same change within their own physiology.
Definitely, we find we detect it in the product. So you would see that, you would definitely see that in the animal. We reduce oxidative stress, physiological stress. Those there that, as compared to the other two treatments, you can tell where they were more calm. We are seeing it in our dairy cows, in the whole system we put around these and other more agroecological practices. You definitely see those animals having a health benefit there.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this is, I just point out, if anybody's got questions or comments, please put them on the chat and we can come back to those shortly. But I mean, I just think, as you and I have talked before, I think this is one of the most exciting things that's basically come out of animal science forever, really. Just to show them how bad we've made the system, but the opportunity to actually repair it is in our hands, and how we manage those animals. And again, this, when you think about New Zealand's unique position and the way in our own environments and the opportunities we've got, if you like, with our land, it starts to open up some tremendous in-market opportunities around differentiation of our products based on the way we farm them. You get around the world, you're obviously well connected with different markets, different opportunities, different organizations working in different places. How does that show up? Is that a real opportunity for New Zealand?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think we need to grab it. And even I even think that in saying that we are embracing this path already would differentiate us from what is being seen around the world. One big market. If we believe that New Zealand is going to feed the world, we would be lying to ourselves. That's a fact, whether we like it or not. We are feeding particular people, and a lot of the people are going to be fed by big nations, big producers, right? That demand. Most of the people in the world live off farms that are 1 or 2 hectares run by women. That's FAO data. we have an opportunity to feed people, to nourish people, and to make more money for that must have a greater value than a commodity. So even when we go to the States, the fast there is grass-fed animals, if you like. Well, yeah, that's fine. They'll catch up, but we should be ahead of that and say, well, yeah, we were into the grass-fed. We are still pasture-based, but we are managing our farming ecosystem in a different way that can guarantee you we are not only taking care of you, but the farm that animal came from. Something like I keep saying, by consuming, you consume yourself, but also you can inhabit the farm of the animal that you are consuming mentally. A lot of people, when they eat our products, they get fascinated, they translate, they locate themselves in the farm that the animal was reared and grazed.
Yeah, so there's a tremendous opportunity for us to think much more and start to create that understanding and some of those shifts at farm level, start to look at the health opportunities, talk more about the health of our system and our health of our product. That's a big shift for a lot of our exporters, so to get out of bulk commodity sales and into value consumer products that really have got, and the return opportunities in that area must be phenomenal.
Exactly. I wish I can sell my low line Angus like that, but I only got 10. But that when you talk about the opportunity, and that's a key thing. We are just scratching the surface. There are answers that we don't have, and I think it's just providing the opportunity to the animals to behave as they would like to behave. Imagine that you're in a dictatorial country where there is no democracy. You can't vote. Well, you would be unhappy. But if you live in a democratic country where you can choose who governs you, immediately you feel better. Imagine like the example that I put to Mark. Well, if I feed you beef all the time, yeah, I give you no options. What if we give them options and we farm the options to the animals to constantly have opportunities to express themselves without jeopardizing pasture productivity or farm productivity. We have data in our own farm that in fact we produce more forage, we produce more milk, more lamb, more deer, and even using half of the nitrogen and 30% less water. So, and everybody can come and see it. The farm is there, the data are available for everybody. Of course, there are a lot of people that don't want to even come to see that.
Well, just there's a couple of questions. Amanda Perry's got a question, but just before we close off, just talk to us a little bit about the Lincoln Farm, what it is that you've got there, and because I think we should all go to see that. It's a phenomenal setup, and you're doing some great things there.
Yeah, and again, like as I said before, this is not a Pablo story. Of course, I'm a professor. I know everything. I'm the coolest guy ever in the planet, right? Of course, all of that. But this is our story. This is supposed to be the story of everybody. A farm that, we created by design. A farm that, a project that I lead with Ian Gordon, but a project that is the research management. Keep Anita Fleming busy, to put it in a way, right? And sometimes she gets mad with me. But this farm, it just happened a while ago. Well, the herds of two Lincoln farms were wiped out by Mycoplasma bovis. The vice chancellor come to me and say, Pablo, well, you're doing some things at high country at dryland farming. Why don't you go back to dairy? And I said, I got enough with 8 years at dairy, and said, is that what you want me to do? And I said, yeah. So we put a team, an international team, to spent a year and a half designing a farm for health. And that's what we call integral health, like the mathematical expression. So that health is a function of the health of the soil, like a living entity, being, the plant community, and the animal, and ourselves there. So we end up designing that farm, and we run a multiple workshops to make sure that we were addressing primary and secondary requirements, if you like, of multiple stakeholders. But at the time of going to a particular tool to address some of those needs, we were considering all those stakeholders democratically. So the vice chancellor was as important as the milker, as the cow, as the environment, and and there you get into constant trade-off, and that's why we're using system thinking and complex adaptive theories without getting too much technical. That's what we are practicing, and now we are in a phase of implementing that design. So we are over the second lactation already. So if you ever want to come and see pictures, I can send you pictures, or I can send you some of that, or I can pull some slides here if you like. But we have guiding principles, and we have objectives there. The vision of that farm is just farm ethically and sustainable and enhancing health, right? That's what we call nowadays integral health farming. So with that integral health farming approach can provide farmers tools to create their own narrative. So a farm of Emily is not going to be the same of my farm, but she can use some of the narratives to create their own thing. Mark could grow cattle in a way that fulfill their own goals, and Hugh can use some of our principles to influence farmers. So that integral health approach that involves us in the decisions as well. So we got some guiding principles there, but we were tackling a lot of key components of the systems, to provide diversity by functional, to incorporate woody vegetation even under irrigation, to change drastically the phenotype and the conformation of the animal, getting to a double purpose animals, low end as well. We are literally using multiple soil sampling techniques, fertigation. We use green artificial technology to measure carbon fluxes real time. We are carbon positive most of the year except for June. So a lot of things are going on there. We run we just finished, well, not just, we are over our second lactation. Our first lactation, we are not implementing everything yet. So only 1/3 of the pastures are with functional diversity. The trees are this tall, and we are planting, I don't know how many thousand trees, more all medicinal with prophylactic properties as well. We are establishing or regenerating a wetland. But to get into the things that may be interest of you, we, in the first year, as compared to the rest of the farm that is managed conventionally, we produce more per cow and the same per hectare with 1 month less of lactation.
Yeah, I think the thing that really impresses me as well is how you're using regenerative design principles and systems thinking principles to actually make this work. And I just flagging, Mike Morgan, who does our social media with us, is on the call, manage this call. We probably should put a live link to that farm through our website as well, so so we can help create that awareness.
Yeah, that would be good, and those are the things that's why, for example, Melissa Bayer comes along, because we are all scientists and we don't know how to communicate things. So Melissa is helping us the communication, putting it all together. The wildest thing we could do is just create a Facebook page.
Yeah.
Now we want to put a YouTube channel, but literally we don't have time. As most of you know, it's really hard to get a hold of me. I'm all over the place, is forgetting everything.
Yeah, well, just for other people's information, we're doing. I mean, the Lincoln farm is also part of our EOV program, so we're doing EOV on that farm, and so I think it's a good opportunity for us to talk a lot more about what's happening there, Pablo, and maybe help awareness of that of what's going on that farm.
Yeah.
I was just cognizant that Amanda Curry's got a question, and hopefully there might be some others. So, Amanda, do you want to open that up with Pablo and see
Sure.
what he's got to say?
Sure. So, we've been quite interested in exploring what animals need. So, what we've done over about the last year is to make a very wide range of minerals available individually to all of our stock. So it's in a 16-way kind of massive feed thing, which we drag around after all the cattle and sheep. And we've noticed by observation a very interesting response from our cattle. They will all move around it, but they don't flock it. So there's no attractant in it. All the minerals are just the mineral, nothing else that might attract them to that. So we will see 10 to 15 animals perhaps around that feeder. They might sniff a few, they might lick one, and then they'll move away, and then another 15 will approach. And what we've seen by blood testing is that we've got quite an improvement in some things that we were very worried about in our stock. But the sheep, well, these sheep are just a totally different situation. They seem just not to respond to it at all. And when we blood test them, we see that their selenium levels are low, and yet selenium was available to them. So my theory about this, born of nothing, is that perhaps these sheep have just been bred out to within an inch of their lives, selected on all sorts of things that we cull sheep for. And they just seem, my sheep anyway, to have lost this ability to select themselves. And so they just don't.
Let me show you something. And I could exercise an answer for that, but let me just stop it there.
I might have to.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Okay. And this is one of the experiments, right? Where we use sheep. You got a strip of plantain, another strip of lucerne, and this is an experiment, right? So, and this is Amanda answer is if the sheep can select there, right? Look at that video. And I'm gonna go to the selenium thing and the mineral thing because I've been getting that question quite a lot. There you got how sheep select. If there was one particular thing that, if there is a requirement, is all of them have the same requirement and the same needs, wouldn't be, or even if they like the same forage, wouldn't be all of them at the same time in the same patch? Obviously not. They all of them just travel around things, combining forages, sleeping on dry grass, but just making their own diet. Right? So there is not one single animal that is the same. But regarding minerals, it depends. It's not only what require. You say, yeah, well, they require X or X, Y, or Z, but maybe the flavor of that particular is not that attractive to them. And that's why we experiment with Juan Villalba and Utah. We put some flavor in some of the things that they have a kind of a natural aversion to that, to motivate them or to train them to eat something, right? That we know that they may need, but they didn't have any any information about that. So just changing flavors or enhancing the preference of them with a particular flavor could help. And if you say, well, they can self-medicate with this mineral and that mineral, well, you just offer them to them choice. And selenium, you can try several things. If not, just put an injection on them. That's easier, right? And see how, while you're seeing how you can increase selenium from all other ways. And I'm not a mineral expert. You got Emily here, that she's a way more. They have much more information, knows about minerals than me and my team. But the other thing that we've done is to fetal program animals in utero. Right? So animals that were exposed to functional diversity has a better well-being, and they enjoy diversity much more than animals coming from moms that they didn't have an experience on diversity. And that's why we say we play with emotions. In those animals that were exposed in utero from the get-go of life to diversity, they perform better under diversity. They have less neophobia and so on. So emotionally, they were better. And you can work on that. But I'm aware that I'm not answering your question directly, Amanda, but in a way, yes, sheep can select it. They tend to be more selective. They can make their own decision. I would imagine there is a question of especially taste, not flavor, or that particular mineral. I would just coat it with something that they really like and see what happens.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pablo. We're getting down, we've probably got another sort of 10 minutes or so. Unique experience to get somebody of Pablo's knowledge available to answer some questions, comments. Anyone else got something that they'd like to bring up? Raise a hand or just no, you got
that intimidating.
You got him completely stumped, Pablo. Yeah, but I think there's been some great. Again, as I keep coming back to, I just think this work that's coming out of what you've been doing and how it's starting to all come together and give us an opportunity again of that whole system, the whole that we've actually got to keep thinking about and all the parts that come into that. Again, reinforces, if you like, some of the holistic management principles that we try and encourage people to understand and involve. But also this, thinking much more about a whole system than parts of that system and the opportunities that present. So, any sort of closing comments that you feel like you'd like to contribute, Pablo? Well, we've got you for another few minutes. Not usually. It's not often that we get you stumped for words. But
that's fine. Well, look, it was really good to see you. All good to see you. Thank you, Hugh, again. And hopefully all of you understand my accent. I know Mark has a training in Argentinian accent, so he may be used to this accent. Again, Mark, I'll try to give you a call later on today. And it's great to feel accompanied in this journey. Like as you all know, sometimes you feel like you're swimming against the current. But that's the only way to progress, right?
We've just had another question up from Rebecca. What level of diversity? Do you want to ask that, Rebecca, while you?
Sure. I guess I've just got the question regarding, you're talking about your diversity of mixes and putting them together. Like there's a very big range of what people call diverse. And, if you're getting up to, a lot of, I think it becomes hard to, establish or to get that range of diversity you have in your mix actually come through from your establishment.
So sorry, Rebecca, what was the actual question?
So what when you're saying a diverse pasture, how many different sort of species have you got in there? Are you planting like a 30 mix or a mix of
Okay,
10?
yeah. So we in the first goes, we try those like crops, with some flowers and all of that. We try those, yeah. They did some trick for us. But then the second one of our other experiments, we put that, and then so that we have a massive flow of annuals, and then we just get into a really diverse perennial pasture. We are working with Agricom as well. They help us to do those sort of mixers and everything. But then you say, well, it did work there. So from cover crops to kind of diverse pasture, it started with like 30 plus species, and then the perennials were going to have 20 something species. But after grazing it conventionally, right? So grazing it conventionally, right? I know they could be doing some things, for grazing it at diverse pastures in a different way. By the fourth year, we had 10 species, right, with real significant functional groups that were 5, something like that. And you walk those pastures, Emily, and you probably saw as well. And for me, if you ask me, I would rather deal with smaller numbers of species that are tailor-made, targeted for the animal and the soil in that particular condition, easier to manage than just put a bunch of that. What we've seen, and we also work with Dr. Gwen Grelet, that even these functional diversities, we had a greater visual soil assessment as compared to the multi-species, right? So visual soil assessment score after 6 months of that. So something's going on that we still don't understand. Maybe there's some communication underneath, which makes sense. But we are trying to, diversity per se, not only come in the particular same space at the same time. You can literally work with diversity over time and different space, and that's what you get into the concept of variety, which is diversity over time. So you can say, well, now you eat this, later on you eat that. After tomorrow I present you with those or that sort of mix in a particular part of the landscape. So you start playing a bigger scale and different time lapses, period. So we are, in addition to instead of what we call diversity per se, for the sake of getting into a quorum sense, right? Which is all right, right? We haven't seen that quorum sense yet. We've seen that when we get into, and I discuss it quite a lot with this lady, Christine Jones, in a good way. I get along really well with him. I say, Pablo, what are you? But I said, look, not all the plants are friends. It's just there is a symbiotic relationship. There is allelopathy. There is other things that you cannot randomly mix a lot of species, because some of them get along, some others don't get along. So we are trying to, rather than by default, I would trial and error. I'm not saying that a lot of people do trial and error and all of that, right? So, well, let's design swords in space and time, not only looking at the soil, but the soil, the plant, and the animal, and ourselves. So simplicity in this particular case can be a game. Some of the things that we've done in the Integral Health Farm is not monoculture strips, but strips of mixtures, which are simpler, right? Or let's say ryegrass, white clover, plantain, and red clover. And then we have another strip which is dominated by legumes based on fescue. And then we've got the medicinal strip that is herbs and chicory, plantain, and other potent clovers, really aromatic. So we are trying those things.
So Pablo, just to pick up on that. So, I mean, that's interesting, because the common wisdom has been, 5 species is better than 2. 12's better than 5 and 20's better than 12. And that's contrary to what you're actually finding. So when you put those groups together, are you putting them in groups that you already know work together so that they're companion plants already, and so you're growing those companion plants? Okay.
Pretty much what you would call it with basic principles, right? You working with, in the grasslands ecology, you call associations, because plants can be associated, You all know, if you grow, lucerne is a quite a selfish plant. I couldn't help myself from thinking some sarcastic thoughts. But if you say, well, will grass grow under a pine plant? No, because they have allelopathy, and those plants release some chemicals that say, no, this is my place, you don't grow here with me. So we are playing now. We went from monoculture strips to super mixed strips, and now we are getting into simple association strips. So those are experimental things that we are doing now. But I really feel that the future is variety over time. So we can get those things and say, well, today I give you this, tomorrow I give you that. I'm not worried about rumen adaptation as long as that's another problem of monotonous systems, not from diverse systems.
That's been really interesting, and Rebecca, thanks for that question. We're pretty well out of time now, and again, I'd just like to really thank Pablo for taking some of his precious time and covering some of that ground. I think there's been some really interesting things, and it's, from our point of view, it's really good to know that that's happening, that that he's out there helping us with our future and the opportunity for changing agriculture in New Zealand so that farmers are all going to be better off. So thank you very much, Pablo. Thanks for what you do, and thanks for taking the time. And thanks everybody for getting on board with us and coming to these webinars. As I say, they are recorded, and take the opportunity to have a look at them later.
Thank you very much, Hugh, and all of you guys. Good to see some of you again. And as you can tell, I'm very, very formal. So feel free to give me a call. Don't email me, just give me a call. Hugh, my number is 021-851-250. If not, ask Hugh, Emily, or Sue. They got my number. Mark got my number as well. I would be quite pleased to visit with you, The best time of catching me is from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Thanks, Pablo.
No worries. Good to see you all.
Thanks.
Thanks all.
Looking forward.
Thanks for coming.